We watched the sea Luther, we wouldn't know it.
Can't tell too much because.
Look at that old car sitting there.
Do you know anybody who was in the Guard?
No.
Not yet. No, I didn't know anybody in service.
What do you think about those people? Some of them, some of the guardsmen came right out of the mills, picking up their workers.
I don't know.
You think that was right that they did that?
Back then, I guess they thought it was. Anything was right back then.
Well, I guess the troops didn't have a choice.
No, they
No,
had to
they
do.
just sent you to get them. I imagine most of them troopers is dead.
Yeah.
Put cigarette down. I'm not certain if we can have with or without cigarette. Doesn't matter? No. It's your battery or my battery?
Must be yours.
Hitler.
I think,
Oh.
okay.
Yeah.
Homer Dunn. I could not think of his first name a while ago. And Truett Sims. And
Let's point a little bit more of the picture, please.
okay,
Take your finger and kind of look at it.
okay. See, Howard, and the rest of them I really don't know. Other than
Name
Right.
anyone you see.
okay, this is Tut Spencer, and James Medley, Howard Todd, Truett Sims, Gordy Hanson, Homer Dunn, and that's all that I recognize on this now.
That's pretty good, George.
This is Ruth right here.
Who was that big?
I don't know, this was when she first went to work in the mill.
How you see?
Okay, we want to start over again, Snookums. I want to say, this is my sister, how old she was, and where she is, and all about it.
This is my sister. She was about 9 or 10 years old and was in the mill. She is deceased now, and she worked in East Union Mill most all of her life.
And lived there.
And lived there in East Union most all of her life.
Okay, we want to do it once again.
And what her
Let's see.
name?
9-0.
This is my sister.
This is my sister, Sally Ruth Harris Roberts, and she was born around 1900. And this is probably when she was about 9 or 10 years old. What else? And she worked at the East Union Mill most all of her life. Lived there on the village too. Raised a child there. The whole family is deceased now.
Good, thank you. Going? Okay, Harry, you were telling me something about your grandfather and being a child laborer in the mill. Could you tell us that again?
About my grandfather? What part do you want me to start on?
You were telling me about his
I told you about him jumping out the window. You don't want to start there.
Yeah, I want you to tell him all that because we didn't get it on camera, you see.
Okay, all right.
So just pretend we never talked before.
Okay, all right. Well, my grandfather, he just like a lot of children, you know, he's
I guess he was a little hard-headed and hard to handle, and he jumped out of the window in his first grade in school and went a half a day, and that's all he ever went to public schools. Well, my grandmother, she was a high school graduate, and she began to teach my grandfather things that he needed to learn, such as math and other things, and being the profession that he was going to be in, which was the leading profession in that day, was textiles. And so he took it from there, and he became one of the best textile men in this country. And people were after him. Everybody was after what they call a good carder or a good spinner, good weaver. That meant that they knew what to do in the operation of this product, getting it out, and good finished goods, good quality goods, and having good human relations with the people in the mill.
Now, what did your grandfather do in the mill?
He was overseer.
Just say my grandfather was an overseer.
My grandfather was overseer in the mill.
Where was this, and what did he do?
What did who do?
Where was he, and what did he do in the mill?
Well, he was in charge of a certain amount of machinery, and this particular process there's several processes. As you start with an open bale of cotton, and you come up with a nice shirt on, and he was in a certain process that he was in control of this, going through this process and turning out good work where it could be carried on through the next process to a finished material.
Well, now, how did you get into textiles?
How did I get into textile? Well, I was born in it, I guess you might say. On June the 7th, 1909, Greenville, South Carolina, the day I was born. And my father followed his dad, and I followed my dad. And this was the customary thing with cotton mill people back in those days. The people who owned the mill liked to hire a man and his wife that had 4, 5, 8, or 10 young'uns, or children, if you want to do it, rather have a better word for it. The more children they had, the better off they were. They liked to have big families, and this just happened that my daddy didn't have such a large family with 5 of us. As I say, I quit school. I begged them to let me quit school where the others some of them could go through and finish high school, which they did. And I went to work. And then I went in taking different courses, many courses that the company that I worked for U.S. Rubber Company for the longest. And they offered a lot of courses. They had men who were well qualified to teach. And I took many of these courses, and then up on my own self, I answered an ad about international correspondence schools, and I'd taken a course in cotton carding and spinning. And I left off weaving. I shouldn't have, because this is what I wound up working with for about 30 years. But anyway, I finished that course completely and completed it and did a good job with it. And then later on, after I went to work, they were offering a course at Georgia Tech. You had to be a high school graduate. And so they had a record of all of my accomplishments, of whatever they were, down at the office at U.S. Rubber. And the plant manager came to me about it, and he says, "What do you think about, would you like to take this?" I said, "Well, I noticed it, but I said, it says you got to be a high school graduate." He says, "I think I can get you in because you have more than a lot of them do as far as what we need." And so I was accepted on this course, and I had to ride a bus up every afternoon as I told you, to the bus station and go to the A. French Textile School there on the Tech campus. And I did this for about 6 months. And the man that was my teacher was also the one who wrote most of the textbooks in the ICS course that I had. I forgot his name. And I began to get better jobs and make more money. And I got on. You get on salary, you get a whole lot better benefits, and that's what I did.
Going back to your younger days, tell me how old you were when you went into the mills and what you did first.
Well, in February, I began to.
And say February and what year?
February of 1923. I asked my dad, begged him to let me go to work where the other children could have it better for the rest of the year, and well, he finally.
Sorry, I'm going to ask you to start that again because I want it tight. In February 19, the year when I was so much old, and then you tell me.
That's right.
Okay, try it again.
Well, in the year of 1923 in February, I was 13 years old, and in that date, those days, you had to be 14 before they would hire you in the mill. I don't know whether they had any particular laws on that or not, or whether it was just a company policy. But I lied about my age, and I told them that I was 14 years old the 7th day of February, and they gave me a job. And I went to work, and I made $9.60 a week, 15 cents an hour for 60 hours work, 11 hours for 5 days, and 5 hours on a Saturday. And that's how I went to work.
Tell us what you did.
Well, I went in there, and they showed me how to push a wagon with wheels on it and put cans with cotton in it. It was coiled up came from some operation which I didn't know much about, but I hauled what they call drawing and it was at the East Thomaston plant in Thomaston, Georgia, and they had 3 mills built there in one. And number 1, number 2, and number 3. Number 2 couldn't produce enough drawing material to go into the fly frames, and I pushed drawing on this wagon from number 3 mill to number 2, which was a distance of about, I'd say, 50, 60 yards.
Now, when did you come to Hogansville?
I came to Hogansville in 1924. I forgot, it was just before Christmas sometime, and I went to work I came down to go to work in the big mill down there, Stark Mill they called it. And they put me over to the other mill, and then I wasn't making the money I was supposed to make. And my dad, in the meantime, moved to a little town of Grantville up here, and he didn't like it, so he had me to come home and go to work up there, where I picked up about $6 more a week. And I stayed in Grantville until, as I said, I worked at Sargent, Georgia, and I left Sargent and came to Hogansville. And I had a sister that lived here, and I boarded with them. And that's why I moved, why I came down here, was on account of this Howard Holbrook, the band director of Hogansville, the band down at the company.
I want you to start telling me about that, just as though you'd never told it to me before.
Well,
see, now it sounds like you've already, I told you yesterday. Just pretend like you'd never told it to me before.
Well, and Sergeant over there, it was a couple of guys that was over there that were friends of my dad. In fact, they were overseers over at Thomaston. Well, one of them was overseer over there, and the other one was what they call a second hand, next to the overseer. And they played in the band over there. And so they wanted to get a band started. And they got in touch with Howard Holbrook in Hogansville, Georgia, and he came over there, and Howard was the band director here, and that's all he did was the band director, but he sold instruments for Con Instrument Company. He was an agent for them, and he went over there, and they decided that the Arnold Mill people decided that they would go ahead and sponsor a band, finance it. And so we had a meeting there, and Mr. Knight asked me, says, Harris, are you going to be at the meeting? I said, I guess so. It's next door to where I live was where they were going to have the band hall. And so the different ones were the Howard Holbrook, the band director from Hoganville. He was talking with different ones. A lot of them never had an instrument in their hand, but I had played in a trumpet in Thomaston, Georgia, in the band. And so he asked me, he said, what are you interested in? I said, well, I'd like to have a trumpet. He said, you know anything about one? I said, well, I played one for about 2.5 years when I was younger. And I started at about 11 and a half, something like that. And I could play that thing too. And he said, I would take it, this one here is brand new, and he took it out of the case and handed it to me. But to play a trumpet, you gotta work at it a while and work up with lips. It's not like sticking a clarinet in your mouth or a reed instrument in your mouth and blowing. You got to use your lip and your tongue. I said, I don't know whether I can play the scales or not, but I did. I played the regular scale, and he said, well, give me some of the chromatic scale. I got about 10 or 12 notes of that. And he said, well, he's pretty good, I think. And so he kind of got me off on the side. He said, I want you to come to Hoganville. I don't want you to stay in this place. So he's the one that got me to Hoganville.
Now, that was 1924. Hold it just.
Called later the Reed Mill. It was the old International Cotton Mill. And I didn't make any money there, and my dad didn't like it, so he got me to come to Grantville. Then it's when Mr. Ogletree was superintendent of the Stark Mill, which belonged to New England Southern Mills then. New England Southern Mills were very prominent up north. And he got me to come back down here. And he told us that I want you in the band down here. And I gave your daddy a job too. Told us who to go see. But he didn't contact him. That was Mr. Singletary, was the overseer of the department that we were going to work in. And so he hired us. My dad was a good millman. He was secondhand up there. And he needed one bad, and he needed a frame hand. I was a good frame hand. And he said, I'm just happy to have you. Give us a house to move in. The overseers had so many houses they could let the employees have. And Papa thanked him, said, I'm glad we could come down here on account of my son there, because he plays in the band. He's a trumpet player. He said, well, I don't want no horn tooters. And so we was hired and fired right there on the spot. And so we went back to Grantville. Well, it wasn't many weeks. I had been coming down here playing in the band. Well, it wasn't many weeks that Mr. Ogletree called me in at the office up at Grantville, at the mill office there, and they came out in the plant and got me and said, somebody wants you on the phone, long distance in, middle of Grantville. And so he says, he told me who he was, and I don't call my name because, you know, he didn't want to get in trouble with that company. But he says, I want you and your dad to come down here. Can you do it? I said, I think so. I said, when you want? He said, I want you Saturday morning. So on Saturday morning we came down, and he wanted to know what, Papa told him what happened. He said, well, that's going to be straightened out. He said, when you're ready to go to work, he said, well, under what kind of conditions? Because he dislikes the band, is the working condition going to be all right with him? He says, I'll assure you the working condition is going to be all right. And so we came back on Monday to see Mr. Singletary, and he was whistling up a beautiful song ready for us to move right then. And that's when we moved to Hoganville. Tell
me something about the life in the band. Did you play for dances?
Well, we had different groups of best musicians in there. You pick out a pretty good little group. You'd call it whatever you want to call it, whatever at the present time, whatever you was playing for. We played for a lot for dances. Yeah, I played for dances. I played in church, and back in those days, we didn't have talking movies. And I played trumpet another fellow played a saxophone, and we had a drummer, and it was a lady played the piano. And you got with your movie, what come with the movie was music telling you when to come in loud, and them horses coming in with them hoofs making a lot of noise, you know. And we did that. Now that's something you probably didn't know about.
That beautiful theater in Hogansville, tell us about that theater.
Well, that theater was what is the community building up there now? You know where the community building is? Well, it was in the auditorium there, and then it was a nice theater. People from all around here came here, and they also had a basketball court in there for the high school to play basketball. The mill company furnished that. They'd take all the seats out and they played basketball in there.
Now, tell us what happened when Roosevelt got elected.
When Roosevelt got elected? Well, from a band standpoint, Mr. Holbrook rallied the band together. Now, wait a minute, I might have to back up there. No, he was still here. He rallied the band together, and some of the boys drank a little. I didn't fool with it, but we carried the band and went up to Grantville, Georgia, to celebrate. They wanted to come up there, and back then it was a smoking tobacco that everybody had to smoke. I forgot the name of that stuff, but it was in a great big old bag. And I know the man ran a store there, and he came out of there and poured out several boxes of it on the fire. And everybody, and we were playing Happy Days Are Here Again, you know. And that was in March. That wasn't the election time, but he took office in March. And election time was in before Christmas of the year before. But we've just like the Lord coming back and taking us all back to heaven back in them days. Because that was quality time back in then.
Tell us about the changes that came about with the textile code.
The textile what?
Code.
Well, I think it's a growing process, people growing up.
What I mean by that is they cut your hours and raised your wages. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Well, that came about when Roosevelt, you know, the many things that he promised was an 8-hour law. And he really stuck it for the union, with union labor. An 8-hour law. And we started that in 1936.
Actually it was 33.
33, I mean,
Okay,
33,
let's
yeah.
start over and you talk about Roosevelt and the
33 we started that, yeah.
Let's start all over again on Roosevelt.
On Roosevelt, well, and in his campaign, he made a lot of promises, and he snowed old Hoover. He was a Republican. He snowed him under and was elected, and everybody was happy because everybody was looking for better times, everybody. And from there, as the Congress was able to enact the programs that he ran on the platform, this was one of the first that they got through the Congress, was the 8-hour law. And so we got the 8-hour law in, and then we went from where I was making about $10 or $12 a week, I got to making $18 and $19 a week, and working 8 hours a day in place of 11 or 12 hours a day.
What did that feel like?
What did it feel like? I thought I was rich. I mean, the people, as I told you the other day, the people working cotton mill in them days was salt of the earth, and they still are. They were poor people, never had anything. Very few people had anything that worked in the mill, but just a living. But I always felt like that everybody was worth more than a living. I think they ought to have a little something extra. And we felt like that we was rich. We had a little something extra. It was a good feeling. to know we was going to a job, and you do a better job and get off more production, and you did a better job for the company. It was better for the company too.
Well, now, right after that, within a year, there was a big attempt to unionize cotton mill workers. Why was that, and how did that take place?
Well, this was on his platform, you know. So they, we didn't know anything about unionized, organized labor, you know, and so they began to come in here, and this fella came in and got to talking, going to house at night, you know, and he laid his groundwork there over a period of, I'd say, about 2 or 3 weeks, or 4 or 5 weeks, something like that, and began to keep people together. And more people you could get together, he could get together and talk to, the more they would talk to in the town, out in the plant, or wherever. And so first thing you know, we had about 300 or 350 people up the railroad cut above Hogansville up there, and this is where we met. And this is where we decided that, and in another meeting after that, that we would organize. And we organized into a labor union. And I forgot that guy's name.
Was it Homer Welch?
What?
Homer Welch?
Homer Welch was one of the men that later took over as president of the local here. And he was a leader in this other part. I don't know whether you want me to get into that or not.
Sure.
Well, as I told you, Homer Welch was elected. Homer was a nice boy. I thought a lot of him, and I think his picture's on that picture right there. Everybody thought a lot of Homer. He was a nice-looking guy, and he did a lot of good work in church. And well, he got a little bit radical with this thing, and I don't know. But anyway, he led the people, and so he came to me and another fellow, Mr. Barker, and he wanted us to, this guy wanted Homer to get 2 men to go to LaGrange to Callaway Mills and organize, sign up the people down there. All they had to do was announce where they was going to be, and so he rented a place down there, and we worked down there 3 days signing up people. I never seen that many people. Callaway was a big textile outfit. They had, I don't know, 10 or 12 mills there in LaGrange. And we worked there, and my boss encouraged me, my second-hand boss, not the top boss, to go. I didn't much want to go, but he encouraged me to go, said, we need you to go down there, you go. And I said, well, what about the pay? He said, well, they'll pay you. You know they're going to pay you. Well, when we worked those 3 days, on Saturday night, and it was all over, we turned over our money and the names of all the people and everything. He gave me $3, and he gave the other man $3. I ought to beat the hell out of him right there, but I didn't do it. I just on that camera. Excuse me. I won't say that word no more.
Okay. Do you know how much you collected down there?
Well, we collected $1 apiece from each person, and I must have signed up 300, at least 300, and he signed up not quite as many as I did. I'd say we signed up 500 plus people, and this was the first time that anybody had been down there. It was a lot more of them joined later.
Then what happened? Okay, hold it just a minute. Okay.